Today we're going to talk about mapping the responsible customer journey. This is the fortnightly Cambridge Marketing College webinar series. Welcome, and my name is Neil Wilkins, and I'll be your host as we go through this session here today. So we all know kind of roughly what customer journey is. It is that step-by-step view that a customer has through all the experiences that we choreograph for them, whether or not we offer products or services or some kind of other opportunity to engage with us. The customer journey is something that we as marketers have a choice of plotting and planning out for our customers or just leaving to chance. Now, most of us, if we are a good quality marketer, we will have plotted at least part of the journey of experience that our customers have. And often, if we're using digital tools, that will be a step-by-step, click-by-click experience with calls to action as people go through our websites and our socials and all the things that we craft for them. If we are thinking about an offline customer journey, then it's every single touch point that a customer will have with us in a human sense. So they might come to our store, they might attend our event, whatever it is, step by step, moment by moment, that is the customer journey. And what we're going to do today is we're going to look at how the customer journey from a responsible perspective, and I'll define that for you in just a moment, but from a responsible perspective actually kind of really changes the game, because customer journey actually is quite systematic. It's quite a process that we use to plot for our customers. But once we put this layer of responsibility on top of our customer journey, it adds a real nuance, it adds a real kind of texture of quality that hopefully will ensure more people want to experience the customer journey. It'll give a higher value to those who already know us and are trusting of us. And in essence, it just improves overall both the sustainability of our organizations and our brands and our products and services, as well as the experience that our customers take away. And of course, that is a perception. So for lots of people, that is something that is perceived and felt as much as it is a logical decision-making process. So what we're going to do in this session is we're going to look at some of the theories, the frameworks, and some practical tools to ensure that when you're thinking about your customer's journey, it's going to reflect the things that we talk about in responsible marketing as being transparency, fairness, sustainability, and of course, inclusivity. So this is about doing wholesome, proper, responsible marketing throughout our customer's journey. And the idea really is to balance commercial success, because this stuff is important. This stuff does bring value financially to your business, as well as long-term stakeholder trust. So it's kind of doing the right thing for the right outcomes. So this is kind of the best of the best when it comes to actually doing decent, proper marketing. So why do this? Why is this important? And why have we got a session here today to talk about this? Well, traditional journey mapping, customer journey, really focuses on efficiency and conversion. So those kind of steps in the process where we try and become just better at what we do from a process perspective. Because what we don't want people doing is kind of coming to a web page, taking away a little bit of information, then stopping and going on with their day. We want them to move to the next step in the journey, and that's traditional journey mapping. It's encouraging people through a call to action to move to the next step in the route map or the journey that we've crafted. And so it is about efficiency. It is about, clearing those blockages or, encouraging more percentage-wise, more people to go through to the next stage. So it's continuous improvement, and it's all about conversion, because ultimately we want them to do something, buy a product, commit to a service, change their behavior in a direction that we're prompting them to do. It is all about that conversion point. But responsible marketing adds some nuances and some quality and texture around these things. I'm not saying those things aren't important. Of course, for most of us, they are. But responsible marketing adds ethical, social, and environmental accountability to each of these touch points. Okay. And this is important. And a lot of the research, and there is a lot of research behind this, will all point to the direction that your customers will switch to you and they'll switch brands away from you if they feel a company or a brand lacks integrity. So if you do this stuff, you are much more likely commercially to be attracting people away from the competition towards you. If you don't do this stuff, you run the risk that people will leave because they'll find what they're looking for in a responsible journey elsewhere. Okay, so this is really important. I can't overemphasize this at all. This is the next level of customer journey mapping, which has been with us for many, many decades. But now, with a responsible customer journey, we're starting to integrate ethical communication. We're looking at data practices that are transparent. We're looking at inclusive representation across all of the elements, if you like, and parts of the customer journey. And we're looking at sustainability across the path to purchase so that people know what they're buying into. They're gonna trust you, they're gonna honor you, they're gonna respect your activities and what you do and how you do it. And it applies this, what we call the triple bottom line. If you've done any kind of sustainability stuff in the past, you'll know what this is. This is the people, planet, profit checklist, if you like, at every interaction. So the triple bottom line comes into play here. We'll see this a little bit later as we go a bit deeper into some of these elements. But this is critical for doing the right kind of marketing here today. And there are many, many relatively new and some much more established theories that really support responsible journey mapping. So you have service dominant logic, where value is co-created with customers. Love this one. Value is co-created with customers. This is not something you can do in isolation. This is something you can actually work with your existing customers to figure out, how deep do you need to go? How authentic and transparent should you be? What kind of things are going to resonate with them more than a typical cold kind of process-driven customer journey? Co-creating the value with your customers implies active listening, implies you're going to respond, implies a conversation within the journey. That's interesting. We'll come on to that again in a little while. There's customer experience theory, a lot of stuff behind this, which talks about experiences that are cumulative and emotionally driven. You can all often get sort of really caught up in data and process and systems when you start to really plot out your customer's journey. But of course, what we're saying here is this responsible customer journey layer will ensure that you are thinking about emotions, not just thoughts, as people go through the journey. So you're looking to treat them in an emotional way, so playing to their heart and their feelings as much as to their head and to their logic. So this goes deep. I mean, this is not kind of just a one-time thing that oh yeah, I did that and expect it to work. This is something you really need to invest in. And I don't mean budget, I mean time and energy and real thought and kind of real care, I guess you could say. And what it does is it brings into play a very well established theory, stakeholder theory, where responsibility lies beyond shareholders. Stakeholder theory talks all about actually being something for everyone. And I do mean everyone internally in the organization, the people who sit around your organization, your local communities, as well as suppliers, resellers, and of course, customers a little bit further out beyond that. All of these stakeholders have a part to play in this responsible journey mapping. It's exciting, it's good, and it's positive, and we can all start to do this if we choose to commit to it. So we can use these kinds of theories to identify both commercial and responsible outcomes at each and every stage. Great opportunity to do this really properly, if you like. And there's a lot of theory there, obviously, you can go deeper into to start to support you. But let's look at some of the stages of the responsible customer journey. Now, if you're already aware of the three core stages of customer journey, so those being awareness, conversion, and retention. So building awareness, obviously, with a new audience, converting that awareness into some kind of action, behavior, or sale, and then retention, where you're actually looking to keep existing customers happy. So awareness, conversion, retention, three key stages of the customer journey. So what we're going to do is now we're going to put the responsible journey into play here. So we're going to look at awareness stage, and this is where we could possibly put in the first step, which is ethical visibility. So avoiding attention grabbing headlines that rely on, you could argue, manipulation or misinformation, kind of, really just overt promotion. And actually then starting to think about actually what are more value-led messages that align with our ESG policies, or maybe one of the SDGs, the Sustainable Development Goals, for example, where we're looking to put messages out there that play to a higher purpose, not just buy this product, sign up for this service, do this now. That real kind of consumerism angle. This is much deeper, actually playing at the awareness stage with your ethical visibility, the kind of reasons why you're in business, the reasons why you come together as a team, as a group, as a business, as a company on a Monday morning to do what you do. Those really, really deeper, meaningful, purpose kind of driven statements. That is what we can start to use if we're being ethical and visible at the start of the journey. So that's one area you can think of. Slightly deeper, next stage in the journey, you could say after somebody's aware of you, they now move into the consideration phase of the journey. And this is where true transparency and, of course, inclusivity need to come into play. Now, with inclusivity, it doesn't mean that you suddenly have to be applicable to everybody. But what it means is you're not going to actually preclude anyone from the journey. But it doesn't mean you have to focus on everybody. Of course, you have limited resources, you have a finite focus and attention here, and that's okay. Your products and services do not and never will apply to everybody. So you've got to be clear about this. When we talk about inclusivity, it means it's open and it's transparent. You're going to use accessible design, plain language, inclusive imagery. You're going to be open about product sourcing, your pricing, any limitations that are there. And you're going to be basically expanding people's understanding of the true you. Actually, what is this thing? What is this company? What is this product or service? So being really transparent and open. So inclusivity in this means you are available to anybody who is curious or would like to consider you as part of, their purchase decisions. It doesn't mean you have to apply to everybody. So segmentation still applies. And we'll talk about that in a minute. There's got to be really clear about inclusivity. It doesn't mean that suddenly you have to reinvent yourself so that everybody, feels that you're relevant to them. As part of the consideration process in the customer journey, people will, by default, be selecting themselves in and out of the rest of the journey. So they'll make a decision based on what you show them at this stage as to whether or not you're the kind of offer that they're looking for, whether or not you're going to solve their need. That is part of an inclusive journey. Filtering out, what we're not saying is you've got to be applicable to everybody. What you're doing is you're allowing people in a very inclusive and transparent way to make a decision, a really thoughtful decision as to whether you are the right organization to work with. And by them saying no, it's not a bad thing. Because what you're doing is you're opening up your resources for others who it is more appropriate for to say yes. So you're not spreading yourself thinly. You're actually, by doing this, you're focusing yourself in really appropriately in almost a laser focused way by being inclusive. So it's just a different way of using that word. And it's about being, really clear to yourself by what inclusivity really means. And hopefully I've made that a little bit more clear for you. Next stage of the journey, we're going deeper, further into this journey, is the purchase stage. So we've had awareness, we've done consideration, now we're moving to purchase. Now, this is where you need to make sure, if you are a responsible marketer, that everything is absolutely fair and clear. Doesn't mean it has to be generous, doesn't mean you've got to change your pricing, but just ensuring that pricing, shipping, terms of engagement, the contract, the deal, the after sales service, all of these things, payment options available, are all clear, frictionless and fair. Now, there's a new word for us here, frictionless. That's an interesting one, isn't it? Of course, what we're trying to do as we plot out our customer journey is to make it frictionless. If you feel friction when you're in a journey, it makes people kind of pause and it makes them kind of reconsider, maybe go backwards up the journey a little bit. We don't want them doing that. Or worse still, it's kind of like, this is just too much trouble. This is just too hard. I can't find what I need here. I'm going to go over there. because this competitor, they've got a frictionless journey. I can just flow through that. It's easy, it's speedy, it's comfortable, and I trust them. That's what we're looking for here. And of course, you can add in here what we call trust signals. And this is where a lot of organizations who are deep into this kind of activity will put in their trust signals, B Corp certification, fair trade, if that's appropriate, any kind of privacy standards, any other kinds of certification that are relevant to your product or service. And this is what we call the point of sale, that purchase moment where we're just looking to get them over the line. We've built their confidence in that consideration phase. Now we've got to secure their trust. And of course, if you can offer things like ethical payment options where there might be carbon offsets, maybe delayed delivery for some lower emission delivery process or something like that, you can then be really, really increasing their level of trust with you as they go through that purchase process moment. So again, maybe starting to rethink some of the ways that not necessarily you do business, but the way that maybe you portray the experience the customer is going to be having. Let's assume now that they've bought into that and they like what they've seen, they've gone through that purchase decision. They're now going into the next phase of the journey, which is they are moving to the retention phase. So now you're onboarding them. So they've got the product or service, they've paid for it, you're ready to deliver. So this, from a responsible journey perspective, is where you're going to explain data usage up front. So you're going to tell them that, yes, you've gathered all this information about them, but now this is how and why you've done that. You're going to offer control over preferences and communications. And again, when you're buying a product or service and you see those lovely checklists where it says, contact me monthly rather than daily with special offers, or I'd like to opt out, please, from hearing from your third party kind of partners. Those little check boxes, they are very, very important. That's a simple example there, but they're very, very important as part of allowing control over this stage of onboarding. And this is what we might term respect and empowerment. It gives the customer in this phase of the journey, it gives them the feeling, and of course it's tangible and it's backed up by evidence here. It gives them the feeling that they are part of a relationship. It's not that you've just sold them a product or service and it's like, yeah, we're the brand, you're the customer, buy it, you've taken it, off you go. This is all about, no, we genuinely want to build a proper, intimate, professionally intimate relationship with you. And there are lots of different ways that you can start to look at this. And of course, if you look and think about how do you onboard a new customer or client, think about the steps. Have you actually plotted those steps out? Do you actually have an onboarding process? Because if you don't, huge opportunity here at this stage of the journey to become more responsible from the get-go. This is kind of really important stuff, and we'll see why this is important a little bit later because we're going to start talking about retention and loyalty. And of course, retention and loyalty only happens if you've onboarded well, because otherwise people forget you instantly and then they don't trust the follow-up communications that you do. So if you do this right, as soon as they are warm for this kind of communication, then you set yourself up well for a great relationship with them into the future. And of course, the retention and loyalty stimulates this key word in marketing, which is advocacy. If there's one word that you take away from this conversation here today, it's advocacy. That is key because what you're looking to do is you're looking to provide a responsible customer journey that is just so sumptuous, that is just so laden with high quality engagement that this customer advocates you. They talk to their friends, their family, their peers, their colleagues, pretty much everybody they know because it was just so good. That's the key. That is your key performance indicator in responsible customer journey. And we're going to continue to do this as we go deeper into the journey, of course, because what you're looking to do is you see the customer buying. Obviously, that's one stage, and onboarding, that's the next stage after that. But then actually using the product or service, actually engaging with it over time. What you need to be doing at this stage of the journey, because of course they're still on their journey of engagement with you, doesn't just stop at the sale. A lot of brands do that. They think, oh, I got the deal, great. Okay, on to finding the next one. No, this is actually where responsible customer journey starts to really score. If you can provide continuous value at a low impact, let's face it, none of us, customers, anybody has got unlimited time. Nobody's just sat there thinking about you all the time. We'd love to think they are, but nobody really cares if we're being brutally honest. Do you really care? There might be one or two brands that you care about. Maybe your Apple iPhone, if you've got one. So the Apple brand, because of course you want continuous access to the internet and everything else. So maybe there are certain brands that do live with you day in, day out. But let's face it, most of us don't have brands or products or services that are, particularly memorable or particularly meaningful at every moment of every day. So we have to make sure that we're providing continuous value through the rest of the journey, but at a low impact level. So it's kind of little and often just drip feeding. I've talked about this phrase drip feeding in the retention phase of the customer journey many, many times over the years. And it's now really important because if you can offer responsible user guides or sustainable care instructions or follow up support and ensure that your customer support is accessible to all of your customers, not just ones who engage more, not just ones who haven't unsubscribed from your newsletter, etc., but to everybody who has got your product or service, then you stand a very good chance of them coming back again to repurchase, to upgrade, to advocate. And those, of course, are some of the key things that we're looking for them to do once they've actually engaged and turned from a prospect into a loyal customer. So, loyalty, going a little bit deeper again into the journey. This is a proper relationship. Okay, it's not dependence. Loyalty doesn't come from being dependent on you, it comes from a very, very strong relationship. I used the phrase, I used it a little bit earlier, professional intimacy. Just think about that just for a moment. If you think about your core customers, do you have a professionally intimate relationship with them? Do you know what they're thinking? Do they know what you're about to do? That's a professionally intimate relationship. We have this on a personal level with our friends and our partners and our family. What about with your customers? This is a responsible journey. Is if you can think about this and, avoid tactics that either lock people in or have obscure contract details and do things that offer genuine incentive, genuine perception of value, not just discounts and free offers. And I've got one particular brand who consistently and constantly, pretty much feels like every day, send me an email. Oh, it's a special offer, or, oh, we're going to be putting our prices up at the end of the summer and, got to get in before the season's over kind of thing. And buy now, all this kind of FOMO stuff. Is that responsible journey? Is that responsible, value driven experience? No, it's all about incentives. It's all about trying to sell more. And it isn't really meaningful in what we would call a value exchange. It might just be a good price. And of course, that's so kind of in the moment. It doesn't build the brand relationship. So we can go deeper knowing all of this stuff is available to us. And of course, with advocacy, which again, as I've said earlier, is the target for all of this, really, is if we can then really encourage authentic voices to be sharing our product and service, the value, the perception, the kind of responsible, higher kind of purpose driven messages that we've been communicating, then those are the kinds of things that enable those who are going to become our brand advocates to reflect the value that they've had in the experience and the customer journey that we've planned for them. And in an ultimate way, I mean, this really is an ultimate way, is if you can find out who they are, maybe you already know some of them, maybe you already have conversations with them, but maybe there's an opportunity here to almost invite them to be part of a responsible advocates group or some kind of VIP community that is kind of really almost protected and locked down from the general customers that you have and actually co-create campaigns with them. These are your brand advocates. They're out there doing marketing for you. And if they really understand the responsible journey that you've been crafting and mapping out, and they get it because they've experienced it, they've felt it, co-create improvements, developments of all of that stuff with them. That could be a really interesting way of informing your marketing. And of course, what kind of relationship is that with these individuals where they are going to feel so valued? And of course, by definition, they are your brand advocates. So they will want to do this. If you feel, oh, well, they wouldn't want to be doing this, then you haven't got brand advocates because brand advocates would love to do it. Now, can you imagine if your favorite brand, who you've been telling everybody about, contacted you and said, look, we've noticed on socials that you often kind of share really honestly the experience you've had with us. We'd love to invite you to a little focus kind of online gathering that we're having with other customers who have been doing things like you. Do you fancy it? Do you fancy kind of joining with us? They will jump at the opportunity. I'm sure you would if you had a little bit of time and somebody came to you and said, look, we really value what you're doing kind of with us. We'd like to build this relationship with you. And can we maybe give you some special discounts or maybe some sneak previews of the new products that are coming through? People will say yes. So enabling ethical sharing by giving them almost first preview to things that are coming through, and also then taking feedback from them because of course they know you more intimately than most of the other customer groups that you have. So they will be giving you probably very honest, very useful information that you can then use going forward. So those are the various stages of this customer journey from a responsible lens, I suppose you could call it that. So how can we map the touch points in practice? Well, there's a little very, very simple template that you can create. So you can put the stages. You can then put the customer goals next to those stages. We've mapped our way through the awareness, conversion, retention stages and some of those little sub stages in between there. Put the customer goals that you want from a responsible journey perspective against those in the next column. Build another column, which is brand interaction. What kind of things do you want to be seeing fed back to you? What kind of stuff do you want to be monitoring in socials, or if you're doing any kind of brand sentiment scoring, what kinds of things do you want to see that people are saying about you in your brand interaction column? Put that one in. Then the next column would be something like responsible risks. Any of the challenges that you see over the things that I've been talking through here, if you see those as potential risks over what you've already got, they might not be happening. They might not actually ever happen, but just identifying them is important. So things like, will we exclude anybody if we do this kind of particular activity? Will we be misrepresenting who we are? Do we have to be very careful in the way that we communicate? And how does, if we say this, how does that play back to what we said before? Because will that then misrepresent actually technically what we've said before? Doesn't mean it will or won't, but just identifying some risks for being a responsible marketer on this responsible customer journey is really important, because then you can look at those things and see whether the brand interactions, see whether those KPIs, those customer goals are affecting actually the reality that comes out on the other side. And then, of course, you can put some kind of corrective strategy in as your final column and use this then to audit and redesign your journey from all of the different angles that we've been talking about. So just kind of creating a little simple, responsible journey mapping template enables you to keep control, because we're talking kind of quite strategically here about these various levels, and you need to be able to then translate that down into, so what does this mean on the ground? What does this mean within my website? What do I actually have to do? So plotting through a template like that is a really good way of doing it. And then you can start to put the stakeholder lens over the top of all of these things. Now, what I mean by that is that considering the experience, not just for customers, we've predominantly focused, I'd say probably 90% so far, we've focused in on customers. But what you need to do, maybe as you're building your template, or maybe over the top of this, look at all of this stuff and think about all these things from various different stakeholder lenses. So employees, if you start to take this into your team meetings or talk to your colleagues about this, what are they going to think? How are they going to feel about this? Are they ready for this? Is there education, information as well that you need to share? That's important to consider. Think about your suppliers. Are they doing good stuff that actually, because they're part of the journey further upstream, possibly maybe, or maybe they're running a journey in parallel, because that's relevant to what you do. So maybe suppliers could be stroke partners in certain instances. What kind of perception will they have over this new responsible customer journey? Think about local communities, and by that I mean online communities as well as physical geographic communities. Who are they? Who are the communities you engage with, online, offline? And also any kind of environmental systems that could come into play here. So think about this really broadly. Are there kind of people, individuals, and groups who this would impact, not just your customers? Because if you can think about this, then you can start to weight the interest and the influence that this particular group of stakeholders will have over the rollout of doing this, because you don't want to just plan this, you want to actually do this stuff. So by considering the impact and the importance this stuff has on the perception of your stakeholders is going to make this a much smoother process. And identifying this up front as part of your sort of planning and as part of your process mapping is important. Don't leave this to chance and don't leave this to the end. Think about this stuff right now, because if you can start to kind of smooth over some of these maybe sort of pointy edges around the edge of this journey, then you'll make your life a lot easier. And as you do that, we talked about risk in the template a moment ago. As you do that, identify any risk points that just jump out at you when you look at your existing customer journey. So if you haven't already plotted a customer journey, I'm imagining that you probably do have a sense of what your customer journey is right now, because obviously this is next level customer journey. But if you've never plotted a customer journey, just go through it using your customer as the lens, or look at it through their eyes and think, okay, what's the next step? What am I presented with here? Oh, it's that. Oh, okay, and it's that. Oh dear. Oh, it's that. And actually go through it from a customer's experience. Identify any what we might call dark patterns in the user experience. Identify any misleading claims for sustainability, for example. Look at any accessibility gaps. If things don't work, or if there are any bottlenecks, or if stuff just isn't clear, make a log of those things. These are identifying the risk points. And then you can run scenario-based audits. You can then take these to your colleagues and say, look, would you actually look at this for me as well? And just kind of go through this and see what you see. Let's do an audit. You can do it actually with customers as well. Choose some of your customer personas and maybe run focus groups. Or if you've got some friendlies, get them to do it. Uncovering any danger points, risk points, or any harm that already exists before you start to make change is obviously really, really important. So testing for things like readability, for example, on your website, any representation that you might be doing in visuals or stories, think about the wording, double check, fact check everything. We've got AI now. That's a very quick and easy way of, doing a sensibility check on that. Look at the standards as well. You might have regulatory standards in your industry, but the more generic standards, look at those as well for accessibility. And of course, treat any cultural sensitivity with care. It's a very, very important thing to do that. And we should be doing this anyway, but for most of us, we get tied up in the busy day to day. And so this is a good chance to really take a step back, take a breath, and start to do proper journey inclusivity checking. Now, there are tools available to help you with this. The Microsoft Inclusive Design Toolkit, for example, is a good one to start with. Many others, if you do a search, many others are available, and that will get you up and running. Now, this whole thing about segmentation, about inclusivity, segmenting is good. Segmenting is fine. It's for inclusion. It's not for exploitation. So I always kind of use the word that segmentation wasn't about, segmenting my audiences so I could exclude anybody. It was about actually making it more relevant so I could personalize. That is the good mindset to have, because a lot of people will challenge marketing and say, oh, well, if you're segmenting and you're going to treat me differently to that group over there, well, that's not very inclusive, is it? But what they're missing the point is yes, it is, because actually what I'm doing is I'm trying as best I can to personalize this journey for you. And then once they realize that, it's, oh, okay. Okay, well that feels a bit better then, and that is actually what we're trying to do. So, avoid filtering out, on things that are obviously very, very sensitive topics like low income, neurodivergence, underrepresented users, for example. And again, there are many, many tools and platforms that can help you to do that. So Twilio Segment actually is quite a nice one, and then you can kind of layer over and translate, your particular situation in that particular sort of part of this exercise. And of course, there are many journey platform plotting tools that you can actually use that will actually help to craft this and put these layers in on top. If you've got a CRM, you can use something like obviously Salesforce with Sustainability Cloud. That's worth, even if you're not going to invest in these, it's worth looking at some of these platforms just to get a sense of what is possible. And maybe if you're building up a little bit of a strategy, but you don't want to use these tools, a lot of these have descriptors and blog areas and help areas of their websites where you can get really good insight into kind of how they work. And then you can bring that knowledge back in and maybe translate it into something that's a little bit more practical for you. Klaviyo is another good one for email, for example, with preference centers. For web, you can use Matomo, which has got some ethical analytics embedded in with it. And of course, with e-commerce, I mean, there are many, many e-commerce sites, but you can use Shopify with Planet app, and that will have a carbon neutral checkout, for example. So many, many responsible journey management tools available to you. And again, just use your favorite search engine or AI to go deeper into these. Once you understand some of the basics of what's possible, then you can go into your own specific user case there. And for all of us, irrespective of what platform we decide to use for our responsible customer journey mapping, we've got to think about our user or customer experience and the way that we design this journey. And of course, a lot of this is absolutely common sense. It really is. I mean, most of this is not rocket science. Avoiding dark patterns like hidden opt-outs or trick pricing is obvious. Some of those more overt, tricks of the trade that have obviously been very much avoided by responsible marketers over the years. But we can all, I mean, absolutely all of us, me included, certainly really go deep into checking that we're using very plain, simple language, predictable flows, helpful defaults. So if somebody does go a little bit off piste from the journey, they can find their way back in and back en route very, very easily. This is like setting the sat nav to get the customer experience that you're offering. It doesn't mean that people aren't going to take a wrong turning. It doesn't mean they might want to stop off for a little bit of a break and, refreshment or to have a little nap or whatever on their journey, but you can bring them back onto the route really, really seamlessly. And that's what we're talking about here. So there's lots of ways to kind of keep this, very, very much an open journey, but think about the customer experience and go through it, live it and breathe it. And this should be something that really does keep you up and awake at night. If you think there are areas of your customer experience that you could improve, then this is where to do it. And of course, as we do this, there is a temptation. We're marketers, come on, we are marketers. So we want to capture some data, don't we? So that we can do those promotions. I'm not saying promotion's wrong. I'm not saying, constantly being in touch with your customers is a bad thing. Of course it isn't. But doing it in a conscious, really thoughtful, mindful way is the way to be a responsible marketer. So minimizing the data across the journey that you collect and use is good practice. Now, I'm not saying it's minimal. I'm saying it's about minimizing it. So only collect what data you need when you need it. Be transparent about how and why that data is used. There are many data protection guidelines and regulations. Again, just search data practice, good practice for marketers, data minimization principle, for example. The ICO have got some really good practice and tutorials in there. Obviously, GDPR for all of us applies. And use progressive profiling. It was the search phrase to be looking out for there, with full disclosure, so that people really understand. They really understand how you are going to be using what they share with you to give more value back to them. That is ultimately why we capture data, is to increase the personalization and the value of the experience back to them. It's not our data, it's their data. And we are, being held responsible for holding that responsibly and sustainably in such a way that it enables us to serve more value back to the customer. That is the only reason why you hold data. Okay, so we need to make that super clear. It's not to sell more to them, it's to provide more value to them, because from that value comes more sales. So if anybody's challenging you outside of marketing in the business, and I see this every single day, trust me, is that, oh, we're going to hold all this data about this customer so we can push some promotions because we're marketers and that's what we do. And I always push back on that and say, actually, that's not the reason you hold the data. And being super clear about that is about being a responsible marketer. So think about that. What's the minimum amount of data that I can collect at certain points to serve even more value to the customer? Because from that value comes the sustainable revenue and the sustainable growth that I'm looking for. It's not about selling, it's about the relationship. And you can find some data and metrics that will back this up. And as soon as you start doing this stuff, you will have data flowing through. You'll have metrics coming in from all different angles. The insights are available. And of course, we have, because we're marketers, we've been doing this for a long time, but generally, we are tracking for commercial reasons. Let's be honest here. Most of the time, we are pressured into, either through clients or through our boss or our management team or our senior marketing manager, whoever it might be, we are pressured into, well, okay, how did those social posts, or how did that promotion, or how did that communications piece, or that blog, or that video, or that short, or whatever, how did that affect our sales? Is ultimately the question we want to ask. But what we're going to do now is track not only conversion, but actually metrics that reflect responsibility. So we're going to ask as well here, consent rate, the unsubscribe or opt-out trends, satisfaction from the customers by segment, the sentiment, for example, from underrepresented groups. We are going to really actively listen. So think about, what could I listen? What could I gather that would enable me to get better and better every single day, every single moment of being a responsible marketer from my responsible customer journey, over and above what I already currently collect from our standard customer journey, which is very sales driven. So this is that layer that I keep talking about that sits across the top. This is the quality, the value, the purpose layer that's really, really important. And one of the tools, which I'm sure if you've listened to me talking on this subject before, you'll know I'm very passionate about the Mindful Marketing Index. This is about saying it will apply in the journey across all 4 areas of your marketing activity if you're a responsible marketer. Your product. What do you need to know? What do you want to know about your product? Your people, so the engagement with the stakeholders, the process, of course, that is predominantly the system that we're creating here with our customer journey, and also profit. This isn't just about making sales. This is about making sales that are going to be valuable to you and the customer in the long term. So this is about selling to the right customers who become brand advocates, and understanding actually from those brand advocates, actually how much profit are we making? Oh, look, when we look at this, it's more than we were doing before. That's probably going to be the outcome here. So those would be the stories then that you could actually then sell back into the organization, because responsible campaign reporting is also really important. So publishing marketing impact to build credibility, not just sales. So when somebody says, oh, how many visits do we have to the website? Oh, how many sales did that then generate, or inquiries? Yes, you're still going to want to be reporting that. But what responsible customer journey metrics could you also report? And what do those metrics actually tell you? So it's not just about the data and the numbers, it's about what do those things actually mean? So can you evaluate? Can you actually then turn those numbers into intelligence that enables you then to make better decisions going forward? Because if you see that there are certain things that have happened as a result of this stuff, talking about purpose, building more value, truly co-creating the communications with your brand advocates, doing this stuff right, will lead to different outcomes. And if you can see those different outcomes performing better than the previous journey that you crafted, you've got an incremental gain there that can go back in your reports to the business. And of course, the business is then going to say, well, can you continue to do a bit more of what you're doing? Because looks like you've got it right, marketer. Wow. Looks like you know what you're doing. And of course you do. So this is what we're trying to do here is we're trying to almost integrate, if you like, this new way of thinking about responsible marketing into the existing systems and reporting that we have. So how are we going to kind of do this? I want to sort of bring this one now sort of full circle back to what we're trying to do. So the responsible journey then in practice is very much thinking about ethical messaging at every stage. So it isn't just about promoting product service for sales. It's about building in the storytelling at various stages in the journey that builds on how you do stuff responsibility, your sustainability journey, your higher purpose, the value relationship you want. It's about being data transparent. It's about empowered communities of advocates and really sourcing and fueling those advocates with stuff that they are going to want to share with like-minded souls in and around your organization. And the result, of course, then is loyalty driven by values, not just by price or convenience. You might be in a marketplace where price and convenience is important. I'm not saying it isn't going to be, but what I'm saying is that you can actually get more of the same and a lot more of the same potentially by loyalty that is driven by values of these things, because this is the way the world is moving in every single sector. Some sectors haven't woken up to it yet. Some sectors are still in denial. The more traditional sectors are saying, oh, this isn't going to touch us. We're not this new emerging kind of audience and our customers are very traditional. Well, it's just they haven't woken up because the world is waking up to this now. So this is a great time to do this. So where to begin? You want to take those next steps now is begin with a responsible journey audit. Begin with your customer journey. Start by mapping one key journey that maybe leads to a purchase. Okay, think about scoring each touch point using different criteria, maybe over and above the ones that are just, well, how many people passed through this point on the website or through this particular post that we did. And not just the numbers, look at ethical communication. Do the audit including accessibility, inclusivity, and any environmental consideration. Just start by mapping one key journey. See how that feels. See how you do. See the changes that come into your template that you've crafted, and just monitor those differences and see where the opportunities lie, because there could be some really exciting stuff in here that you haven't yet untapped. So some final reflections just for you to take away and think about here. This is kind of really my view on kind of where I would start if it was me. So responsible customer journeys build long-term trust. We know that to be true. They do reduce risk of getting it wrong, and they will improve your brand equity. They just will by default. Responsible marketing is a beautiful thing that is almost irresistible for customers who care about what you do. But start small, map one journey, as I've just said there, and involve multiple perspectives. Remember those different stakeholder views? Look at this not just from your perspective as the marketer who owns the journey. Think of it from everyone who's going to come through that journey or who might be impacted on it. Those are your stakeholders. And then make one meaningful change at each touch point. Wouldn't that be an amazing thing? Monitor the before and after. Look at the A/B testing of what you do. And then I would say you are going to see a whole different customer journey going forward. And I would challenge anybody to say that they wouldn't that they would want to go backwards into the old traditional customer journey. Because I think once you've let the genie out of the bottle on responsible customer journey mapping, this is going to be the future to building those long-term, professionally intimate relationships that we all crave within our marketing.